Greetings, and welcome back to the channel as we continue to dive into the world of sci-fi cinema. The science fiction films of 1931 were all adaptations of novels, some more famous than others. 3 were remakes of material I've covered in previous episodes, and each blends science fiction with other genres, whether horror, comedy, the disaster film, or psychological thriller. The most well-known of the genre mixing was sci-fi and horror with Frankenstein. On a cheerful note, 1931 was also the birth year of writer, director, producer, and actor, the man, the myth, the legend himself, William Shatner, whose impact on the science fiction film and television genre will still be felt long into the 21st century. Join me as I navigate through the realms of speculative fiction, exploring the cultural, societal, and technological influences that shaped these timeless gems, culminating in a cinematic odyssey that transcends the boundaries of time and space. Before getting into the films of 1931, if you're enjoying the content, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more history of sci-fi content. Your support is what keeps this channel thriving, and I'm thankful for everyone stopping by and sharing the love for this amazing genre. Science fiction is an ever-evolving genre because the science of the past can become fantasy in current times. It is one genre that merges well with some, like horror, action, and sometimes comedy, while not always pairing well with musicals, as seen in 1930 with Just Imagine. As science and technology advanced, the films I discussed in my first episode, covering 1900 to 1909, were already whimsical and fantastical by 1931 standards. Big-budget sci-fi flops like Metropolis and Just Imagine made studios hesitate on greenlighting similar projects in the early part of the 1930s. Economic hardships and the emerging Great Depression, film genres included musicals, comedies, and escapist fare that provided lighthearted entertainment. Additionally, gangster films, reflecting the social issues of the era, were on the rise, with movies like The Public Enemy capturing the public's fascination with the criminal underworld. So, in 1931, there was little room for the science fiction film. To survive, the genre needed to merge with others, and no one did it better than Universal Pictures. Today, the series of monsters reflect the quintessential aspects of how we think of Frankenstein, Dracula, the Mummy, among many others, even to the point of parody. A blend of horror and science fiction elements, delving into themes of experimentation, the consequences of scientific pursuits, and ethical dilemmas surrounding tampering with the forces of nature. These narratives, often centered around characters who harnessed scientific knowledge to create or reanimate life, reflecting a cultural fascination with the potential and risks of scientific advancements. The success of the Universal monsters set a precedent for the development of science fiction horror as a distinct subgenre.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
The impact of these films reached beyond their immediate genre, influencing the visual storytelling and technological innovations in filmmaking. The use of special effects and makeup techniques showcased advancements in cinematic technology, demonstrating the possibilities of on-screen transformation and creature effects. As the 1930s marked a period of significant scientific discoveries, the Universal Monsters films served as a cultural reflection, blending horror with speculative elements to create a lasting impact on the portrayal of science in cinema during this transformative era. These famous characters are still a part of popular culture. The studio is still trying to make these monsters happen today with little success. In 2017, we saw the disastrous film The Mummy, which was supposed to reignite the Universal Monsters series. But Tom Cruise and director Alex Kurtzman lost Universal almost $100 million. In 1931, audiences were introduced to one of my favorite films I've discussed for this series on the history of sci-fi film. Frankenstein was directed by James Whale, who would go on to direct The Invisible Man in 1932 and The Bride of Frankenstein in 1935. Starring Colin Clive as Henry Frankenstein, Mae Clarke as Elizabeth, and Boris Karloff as the monster. Making $12 million on a $262,000 budget, Frankenstein was a critical and audience success. The film draws inspiration from Mary Shelley's novel, Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus, which is typically categorized as Gothic fiction and an early example of science fiction. But the film itself was more of an adaptation of the 1927 play by Peggy Webling. It was in this 1927 play that the monster was first referred to as the same name of his creator, Frankenstein.
Take care there, Frankenstein, take care.
A common error that is still made to this day. In the film, Dr. Frankenstein's experiments with reanimating dead tissue using electricity align with scientific themes, reflecting on the speculative nature of early science fiction. The narrative explores the consequences of unchecked scientific ambition, ethical considerations surrounding creating life, and the implications of playing God, all of which are elements commonly found in the sci-fi genre. While Frankenstein is undoubtedly a classic horror film, its roots in Shelley's novel and the inclusion of scientific and moral themes contribute to its classification as a work that encompasses both horror and science fiction elements. Over time, the film has become a significant and influential part of both genres. The full film is not available to watch for free online. However, it is available to rent on several streaming services, such as Amazon and YouTube. And don't forget to check your local library. They are a great resource for finding classic films on DVD and sometimes Blu-ray. There are bounds beyond which man should not go. These are the words from Dr. Lanyon to Dr. Jekyll. The various versions of this mystery horror science fiction hybrid have captured our attention since Robert Louis Stevenson's publication of The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in 1886. What is interesting to me is how the science of the transformation leans into the sci-fi genre, while Hyde's treatment of Ivy is where the horror aspects reside.
I'll show you what horror means.
This 1931 pre-code adaptation for Paramount Pictures was released a few months after Universal's Frankenstein and was a huge hit with audiences. Like Frankenstein, it is seen today as more horror than science fiction. The success of the film paved the way for the studio to explore more horror-themed productions. Though the original work of fiction captured Victorian fears and values, this talkie creates a world that is visual and full of diegetic sound that truly immerses the audience into this world.
Kill myself.
Why didn't you seek help before? Why didn't you go to the police?
I was afraid. You don't know him, sir. He ain't a man, he's a devil.
Director Ruben Mamoulian studied the theory of evolution, which was a popular topic after the Scopes monkey trial in 1925. Society's ideas about prohibition also made its way into the film. While the narrative involves a scientific experiment conducted by Dr. Jekyll, leading to the creation of Mr. Hyde, the focus of the story is on the psychological horror and moral consequences of Jekyll's transformation. This adaptation presents Dr. Henry Jekyll, an esteemed scientist who becomes consumed by the desire to separate the conflicting elements of good and evil within the human psyche. Released during the pre-code era, a period before the strict enforcement of the production code, this allowed for more explicit and provocative content in films. And Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde includes scenes with themes of sexuality and violence that would be restricted in later years. Ivy's seduction of Dr. Jekyll early in the film would have been quite salacious in 1931. In Dr. Jekyll's experiments, he concocts a potion that transforms him into a sinister and uncontrollable Mr. Hyde. As Hyde, Jekyll indulges in dark and immoral behavior, leading to tragic consequences for himself and those around him. The film is renowned for Frederick March's dual performance as Jekyll and Hyde, and its atmospheric cinematography, capturing the psychological and moral conflicts at the heart of the narrative. Using time-lapse photography for the transformation from Jekyll to Hyde was a state-of-the-art technique at the time. Mamoulian utilized innovative special effects, including a combination of makeup and in-camera techniques, to visually represent psychological changes of the characters. Makeup artist Wally Westmore was influenced by comic book images of Hyde available at the time. Frederick March would go on to win the Best Actor Academy Award for his leading performance, a rare win for speculative genre films at the Oscars. It was also nominated for cinematography and adaptation writing. I personally prefer John Barrymore's performance from 1920 that I covered in an earlier episode. Barrymore was approached to reprise his role, but he was under contract to MGM at the time. Frederick March was under contract to Paramount and was hired because of his resemblance to Barrymore. Miriam Hopkins as Ivy Pearson was the most human and layered character who bore the brunt of the tragic consequences of Dr. Jekyll's experiments. Her portrayal added depth to the film's exploration of morality and its impact on individuals. The film received critical acclaim for its atmospheric cinematography, effective use of shadows and lighting, and Mamoulian's directing innovations. It remains one of the classic adaptations of Robert Louis Stevenson's novella. Making $1.25 million on a $535,000 budget, the film received mostly positive reviews, especially praising the leading man as well as the visual effects, though Variety called the film slow and labored, but praised the transformation sequence. The film is available to watch for free on Vimeo, and I'll post a link in the description below. Fin du Monde, also known as The End of the World, is a French film from director Abel Gance, who was best known for his 1927 masterpiece, Napoleon. The film envisions a catastrophic scenario after a comet approaches Earth, and a group of scientists, including the protagonist Claude, struggles to find a solution to avert the impending global disaster. As society grapples with the impending doom, the film explores themes of human behavior, riots, religious salvation, morality, and the collective response to overwhelming threats. Gance's film combines elements of science fiction, drama, and social commentary, providing a thought-provoking exploration of humanity facing an apocalyptic event.
La fin du monde. La fin du monde.
Notable for its visual effects and its attempt to capture the psychological and emotional impact of an impending global catastrophe, as well as striking visual style, you would think that the film would be better remembered, but it faced challenges, including a troubled production and distribution issues. The original cut was over 3 hours long, but was edited down to 105 minutes after producers took control away from the director. It was edited down even further for the American release. Furthermore, it was released during a period when popularity of science fiction films was not as good of an idea as in later decades. However, Abel Gance was a respected director known for his innovative techniques, and The End of the World showcased some of his visionary and experimental approaches to filmmaking. Based on Omega: The Last Days of the World by Camille Flammarion, the film was an idea Gance was thinking about bringing to the big screen for well over a decade. I covered another film with the same English name for my video covering science fiction of 1916. The Danish 1916 film from director August Blom did not directly credit Omega: The Last Days of the World, but after watching both versions, it is impossible not to see how both use the same book as inspiration. Overall, the cinematography is better in Gance's version, but the ending is too abrupt for my taste. The 1916 version did give us more catharsis after the comet impacts Earth. Most of Gance's film is just a straight drama, with some science elements. The story follows a group of characters that range from manipulative businessmen, scientists, and their families. But for the last 20 minutes, it is more impactful as the comet can be seen from the naked eye through the massive destruction to the planet. As the comet gets closer and closer, the human characters choose their own way to greet the end of the world. The rich dance and party. The poor stand on the street. Some riot, some pray, some contemplate, and others just drink the night away. In 1931, there were various concerns and challenges faced by society, but widespread fear of an imminent end to the world was not a prominent issue. The world was still in the middle of economic hardships of the Great Depression, and political tensions were escalating in different regions. The film speaks to how easily humanity can be destroyed and how morality can quickly break down. Unlike the 1916 film that hit home more closely because Halley's Comet flew by Earth just a few years prior, as well as being made in the middle of World War I. It is filled with heavy religious undertones, from starting with images of a crucifixion, a passion play with the director himself playing Jesus, to monks flooding the rich man's party as the world is about to be destroyed. Abel Gance's first sound film received negative reviews and poor audience reception. One French critic called the film portentously naive and blatantly unrealistic. Yes, it's not a traditional disaster film. With innovative cinematography to extreme close-ups, this is an auteur disaster film. I appreciate Gance's work for what he was trying to do, and found the last 20 minutes to be more dramatic than the rest of the film as humanity embraced the end. The End of the World is available for free on the Internet Archive, and I'll link it in the description below. You've never seen anything funnier than Will in this smart, two-rivet business suit with galvanized trousers and spare hinges. More laughs than the law allows. These words were from a May 1931 print ad for a Connecticut Yankee, an American adaptation of Mark Twain's 1889 classic novel, A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. Directed by David Butler, who also helmed 1930s musical Just Imagine, the film follows a contemporary American, Hank Martin, played by Will Rogers, who is transported back in time to King Arthur's medieval England. Hank, a practical and resourceful man who finds himself in the mythical Camelot and soon realizes that his knowledge of modern technology and science gives him an advantage in this ancient world. Hank gains his first bit of influence after predicting the sun will disappear from the sky, causing panic amongst the crowd. But it is not magic, but an almanac and Hank's vast knowledge. He introduces technological advancements and reforms with a healthy dash of advertising flair.
Yes, sir, we're getting the supply here, and then I'll create the demand.
Including cars and radios, challenging the traditions of medieval society. The production used 174 Austin cars as well as modern tanks in the final battle scene that you'd never expect to see in a medieval period film. As Hank rises in influence, he faces various challenges and encounters opposition from those who resist change, especially from the powerful Merlin. The film explores themes of time travel, social commentary, while combining elements of comedy, fantasy, sci-fi, and satire, using the fish-out-of-water premise that will be used many times in film history to explore potential consequences of introducing advanced knowledge and technology to a historical period that has no idea humanity would ever reach such levels. I enjoyed this ridiculous but fun film, though it updates Twain's satire into 1930s sensibilities and current-day historical references to Mussolini and the KKK. Will Rogers is a joy to watch, and Myrna Loy is radiant as Morgan Le Fay. Director David Butler also hired his Just Imagine leading lady, Marina Sullivan, in a small role. It goes to show how book-to-film adaptations have always been a popular form of entertainment.
Bah! 'Tis no magic. 'Tis a child's trick. I, Merlin, can do it.
It doesn't take itself too seriously, and that would have been a welcome respite in the dark times of the Great Depression, early 1930s.
Ah, sire, 'tis magic, but not the true magic. Canst this, boss of thine, do what Merlin can do?
Oh, I can do anything you can do and then turn a handspring.
It was popular with audiences making $1.2 million on a $750,000 budget. That $1.2 million is about $24 million today. The film also briefly explores the possibility of something akin to the grandfather paradox, in which Hank almost sends his ancestor into a dangerous situation that would get the character killed and therefore eliminate Hank's own existence. The 1931 pre-code version was edited down to 85 minutes and re-released in 1936 to Hays Code standards. The 1936 re-release of the film is available for free on YouTube, and the 1931 version is available for free on the Internet Archive, which I'll link in the description below. Rapid transformations in history, culture, the sciences, and the arts characterize the early 1930s, setting the stage for the evolution of science fiction. Writers and filmmakers deeply impacted by the events of their era channeled these influences into their creations. To fully grasp the sci-fi films of 1931, it's necessary to take a brief look at the societal events that shaped the collective human experience. And so, for the rest of this episode, I will focus on the world at large that played a role in influencing filmmakers and storytellers. The completion of the Empire State Building. Completed in April and opened in May, the Empire State Building in New York City became the tallest building in the world at the time and an iconic landmark of American architecture. The Great Depression of the 1930s marked a devastating economic downturn with widespread unemployment and financial hardship across the United States. The unemployment rate soared to unprecedented levels as businesses collapsed, banks failed, and millions struggled to find work, leading to a prolonged period of economic despair and social upheaval. It spread worldwide through a combination of interconnected economic factors, trade imbalances, and the global nature of financial markets. In June, U.S. President Herbert Hoover proposed a one-year moratorium on war debt payments to ease the economic difficulties of the time. The Mukden Incident. In September, the Japanese military orchestrated a staged attack on a Japanese-controlled railway in Manchuria, utilizing the event as a pretext for their subsequent invasion and occupation of the region. This calculated move marked a significant escalation of Japanese aggression in East Asia. The conviction of Al Capone on tax evasion charges. On October 18th, Al Capone, the infamous American gangster, faced legal consequences when he was convicted of tax evasion in a landmark trial. In the aftermath of his conviction, Capone was sentenced to 11 years in prison, marking the end of his notorious criminal career during the Prohibition era. In the creative arts outside the film industry, we saw the publication of The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck. This novel chronicles the life of a Chinese peasant as he navigates through love, hardship, and societal changes, providing a poignant portrayal of the challenges faced by rural families in early 20th century China. The debut of Dick Tracy. In October, we saw the debut of the Dick Tracy comic strip from cartoonist Chester Gould. The comic book industry in 1931 was still in its infancy, with the medium predominantly featuring comic strips in newspapers rather than standalone comic books. Some popular comic strips during this period included Mickey Mouse, as well as Blondie by Chick Young and Little Orphan Annie by Harold Gray. These strips often showcased humor, adventure, and crime-solving narratives. While the concept of the comic book as a bound publication had not fully taken shape, the popularity of comic strips laid the foundation for later development of the comic book format as we know it today, a form of creative expression that will have a monumental influence on film and television. 1931 also saw the debut of two paintings from influential 20th century artist, Cal Scully, Red, White, and Blue from Georgia O'Keeffe, and The Persistence of Memory from Salvador Dali. And finally, the advancements in physics, astronomy, and technology. Ernst Riska and Max Knoll created the first prototype for the electron microscope. On May 27th, Swiss scientist Auguste Piccard and engineer Paul Kiefer set a new hot air balloon record reaching 51,788 feet, gathering information about the upper atmosphere and measuring cosmic rays in the first human flight into the stratosphere. The discovery of heavy water. In November, Harold Urey at Columbia University discovered deuterium, a form of heavy water which played a role in the development of nuclear reactors. On December 14th, British electronics engineer Alan Blumlein, working for EMI, submitted a UK patent application for improvements in and relating to sound transmission, sound recording, and sound reproducing systems. Blumlein's innovative patent aimed at enhancing the transmission, recording, and reproduction of sound, laying the groundwork for advancements in the field of stereo audio technology. In 1931, Hollywood and the global cinema industry faced challenges of the Great Depression, with the economic downturn impacting film production and distribution. Despite these challenges, the industry showcased resilience, producing notable films such as City Lights and Cimarron. When discussing science fiction films of 1931, it is essential to consider the broader context of the industry as a whole. And though this channel is about science fiction, I do want to highlight some of the notable non-sci-fi films and industry events of the year. The most bankable stars of the year were Clark Gable, Joan Crawford, Will Rogers, Edward G. Robinson, Marlene Dietrich, and Greta Garbo. German expressionist pioneer, who's been mentioned several times in previous episodes, F.W. Murnau, passed away on March 11th at the age of 42. He was best known for his groundbreaking films Nosferatu, Faust, and Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans. And Thomas Edison, the pioneering inventor, passed away on October 18th. He made significant contributions to the film industry by developing the kinetoscope, an early motion picture camera, and kinetoscope parlors, creating the foundation for the evolution of cinema in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. City Lights was the highest-grossing film of the year, making $4.5 million. That's over $90 million today, on a $1.5 million budget. Directed by Charlie Chaplin, this timeless silent film, in an era of talkies, follows the poignant and comedic journey of the tramp as he befriends a blind flower girl, navigates through various adventures, and strives to help her regain her sight. The year also saw the big screen debuts of Ralph Bellamy in The Secret Six, Bette Davis in Bad Sister, and Otto Preminger made his directorial debut with The Great Love. Some of the other films released in 1931 include Cimarron. Directed by Wesley Ruggles, this epic Western film chronicles the sweeping social and political changes in the American West, focusing on the life of an ambitious couple as they navigate the challenges of a frontier life, oil booms, and the Oklahoma land rush. Dracula. Directed by Todd Browning and starring Bela Lugosi, Dracula is a classic horror film that brings Bram Stoker's iconic vampire to the big screen, depicting the ominous Count Dracula's journey to England and his encounters with Professor Van Helsing, setting the standard for subsequent vampire portrayals in cinema. A Nous la Liberté, directed by René Clair. This French satirical comedy explores the impact of industrialization on society, telling the story of two friends who experience the consequences of modernity and technological progress as they navigate the challenges of work, freedom, and societal expectations. The Public Enemy. Directed by William A. Wellman, the classic gangster film that follows the rise and fall of Tom Powers. Portrayed by James Cagney, exploring the criminal underworld of Prohibition-era Chicago and the consequences of a life of crime. M. The groundbreaking German thriller directed by Fritz Lang in his first sound film delves into the psychological horror of a city terrorized by a child murderer, played by Peter Lorre, as both the authorities and the criminal underworld launch a manhunt to capture the elusive murderer. In the year 1931, science fiction films emerged as beacons of creativity during a difficult period in history. As we conclude our exploration of cinematic wonders like Frankenstein, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, The End of the World, and A Connecticut Yankee, it becomes evident that these films transcend their time, leaving an indelible mark on the genre. The imaginative narratives coupled with the innovative techniques employed by their visionary filmmakers set the stage for the future of sci-fi cinema. Their influence can still be felt today, reminding us of the power of storytelling to transcend boundaries and captivate the human spirit. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe for future videos about the history of science fiction cinema. I'm looking forward to getting into the films of this decade, the hidden gems, the serials, and those that blended genres.